Great.
So, Dr. Fola, Yahaya, welcome back.
Very kind. I'm glad you used my proper title because I did spend 4 years doing a PhD before.
Well done.
So we're back.
We're back.
You know what? It's almost exactly a year since our last podcast.
Where have we been? Why have we left it a year?
The question is, where haven't we been? You've been to Madagascar, you've been to Kenya, you've been to lots of other places.
You've been in your office,
I've been in my office.
solving problems,
You're right.
creating strategies.
Yeah, brainstorming and thinking about comms and how storytelling, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but is really important in this industry.
It's still absolutely vital, and I think it's becoming more and more and more important, and we're going to get onto that. But about what is the mood music, what's the current narrative taking out of the world around international development.
Let's go back to basics. Why haven't we been away? What have we been doing?
Well, isn't it the stats around, you pulled out some lovely stats around podcasting, people don't get beyond 1 or 2 or something?
Something like 95% of all podcasts don't get past the 3rd episode. So if you can do that...
Well, we did 4.
Exactly. So we
did 4 and then we stopped.
So we're already successful. However, what I love about that is that I was trying to find the provenance of that stat. And I traced it back to our Reddit post. And Reddit, of course, is the font of all knowledge and is like the Bible, and of course is gospel truth. But actually, even after that Reddit post, I couldn't find any actual research saying that that is true. The estimate is that in 2 years' time, so actually less than 2 years' time, maybe 18 months' time, 90% of all the content online will be AI generated.
Is that true?
Who knows? But it went viral, that statistic, and it's probably not true. But you can, but you already see the problem with content online is that, in a way, we've already got this poisoned well scenario where AI content, because creating good content is actually really difficult. Most people are now outsourcing it to ChatGPT. People can't write, people can't communicate, are saying, oh, this is such a hassle. Let the bot deal with it. So that means that almost everything is being done through ChatGPT or Claude.
We are entering a hall of mirrors.
Literally. And of course, that data itself is going back into the training systems and being used to train AI systems to write more gibberish and more nonsense.
Well, that's interesting though. But if we're talking about, look, it's just reflecting itself and listening to itself and regurgitating itself, but that self is very much Northern Hemisphere centric, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want this to be purely about AI because it's such a huge topic. But I think this plays a really important part in the comms landscape. If all the content that's being produced, and that goes from resource mobilization efforts, awareness raising efforts, behavior change efforts, if all of that stuff is being outsourced to a bot who doesn't care, which is obviously being affected by the entrenched bias of the Western training data, then what value is the comms material that's being produced? And back to the importance of storytelling within comms. We have in 2024 we've had probably the biggest democratic year, for decades. By democratic year, I mean obviously elections, and we have a few coming up which are major. We've just had our wonderful election in the UK. And I'm happy to say it's the right result.
A bastion of centre left.
Exactly. But during this process, the narrative that has led to, the increased popularity of populist movements is that we shouldn't be throwing money down the drain in other countries. We have problems at home, and we should be spending that money to help our own populations do what they do. So it's been a really simple. Aid has become a whipping boy in many countries, from Eastern Europe, down to potentially the States.
Yeah.
Because no one has really thought about how to construct a good narrative about why, if you support countries, people won't want to leave. And I think it's a really simple tale that should be told on a regular basis, that if you provide support and you help those countries get on that, help those countries develop, then there's no desire for people to leave, become economic or political migrants.
Yeah. Story, I mean, that's what you were talking about there. And I think the idea of storytelling, yeah, exactly. How do you present those ideas? How do you change people's views simply by shifting the story? Because one story is that you've got people invading your borders in boats, and they're coming to steal all your resources. Or another story is you've got people with skills that you need coming across the border. I mean, it's the same person, just a different narrative, and that's the importance. There's comms right there. Exactly. That's why it matters. And so when we talk about this really challenging 12 months of the rise of AI and everything it's giving and everything it's taking away, and then we're looking at these massive budget cuts and the pressures then that's putting on different regions and the impact that's having on regions, and then we're talking about localization failing, and we're talking about SDGs failing. We go, we know and we talk about international aid being absolutely vital. It's our job as comms professionals and also to the people that we're talking to understand that it's even more important to articulate a story that demonstrates the importance of international.
I think so, and we've spoken about AI, almost ad nauseum, but if it's getting so crowded out there on social media and in the news, crowded out by bad content, which has been created to create negative narratives that appeal to whoever is trying to influence people, then the aid industry and the aid sector has to come up with a set of stories that resonate with people, human stories. So forget about all the tech and the AI and the tropes about AI helping developing countries leapfrog decades of poor development onto the shiny super highway. It's got to be about thinking, simple stories, human stories that resonate with people and explain why it is important.
Yeah, I think that's right. The power of authenticity.
Exactly.
We've spoken about this, about why, what pressures AI will put on us as a business around content creation, and you see it getting better and better. The stuff that Sora, is it Sora? Sora can create is incredible in its detail and in its realism, but it is a facsimile. It's not authentic, no matter which way you look at it. And actually, to capture lived experience, which is what we were doing in Madagascar, what we're going to be doing in Zimbabwe and Ghana, capturing that lived experience of somebody who is living out without a sustainable energy supply and the impact that has had on their life. I'm not showing images. I'm not making images up and then adding a narrative underneath it. I'm actually capturing that person's experience because that person's experience matters, and I'm validating that experience by doing that. And I believe, and I think a lot of other people believe, that's absolutely essential if you want to change people's lives, if you want to improve the experience of millions and millions of people, which is what we work in this sector for, which is what all our clients aim for, then it must be authentic.
So, what practical tips would you give, a small NGO that's struggling with budget cuts, in a sector where comms is often an afterthought? What are the three things you would say they need to think about in the coming months to try and raise awareness, raise money, and maybe affect behavior change?
I would say, apart from raising money, obviously, to start a project, before you even step onto that project, think about how you're going to talk about that project. Think about how you're going to deliver that project to an audience in order to make that project sustainable. I think then you think about how you're going to capture the experience of the project, and you do it in an authentic way. And I keep using that word authentic, and I think in some ways it's been devalued, but I'm not sure there's another word that quite captures it. But you capture that lived experience. You demonstrate the power of a project through that in that way. And then the third thing I would say would be hire us to do it, to help you.
For me, you're absolutely right. I think we've said this for many years with one of the takeaways we have from the UN Water Conference last year was that comms is an afterthought. It's like, oh God, we've implemented this project, we've achieved all these great things, but we now need to put it online, tweet a little bit, add a hashtag, and then obviously all that good work just essentially just goes out into the ether and gets lost.
Yeah, nobody hears about it, nobody knows about it, all the impact's gone, and it's a tragedy. And that's why, and then you get, is it any wonder that people think that international aid is a waste of money? Your strategy is wrong. It's comms is absolutely vital. How you present something. I go back to the way of talking about migration. Just a series of different words about describing the same event changes completely the perception of that event and the importance of it.
Tell me why Madagascar was such a good example of localization in action and the value of visual impact reporting.
I will answer that, and I would say that in this way, I will get to Madagascar, why it was an important example of localization in action, because it really, really was. But later in the year, we're going to Zimbabwe and to Ghana to film 2 successful projects around protecting endangered species, and these are projects that have been invested in with international aid. And they are examples of it really working. And without that international aid, these projects wouldn't work. And alongside, we see that our trip to Madagascar. When you see these together, you see the projects in Zimbabwe and in Ghana and also in Madagascar. You start to see the value of international aid. And it's something that has brought it home to me, and we've been talking about it. What's the crux of this? Actually, I want to change the mood music. I want to change the narrative around international aid. These are really good examples of that. To answer your question about Madagascar, we went down to Madagascar. We were down there for a couple of weeks, working in a very remote community where they were living without electricity and without running water. The project that we were there to demonstrate the impact of, it's being initiated. We were down there for the first phase of this, where we were showing what the experience is like of people living without sustainable supplies of electricity. The project was to install a mini solar grid just outside this community, and it's a fantastic project because we filmed actually in 2 different towns. One was they hadn't had the solar grid installed, and one where they did. And one of them had streetlights and one of them didn't. And one of them had running water and one of them didn't. And the different life experience there was incredibly marked. But it was what I was struck by, myself and Joe and everyone else who went down there, was that the resilience of people living or having that kind of experience, but also their anticipation around the simple impacts of getting sustainable electricity. So you were going to something like a rice husking mill, and this rice husking mill was currently working on a diesel engine. So this is one of the most polluted environments I have ever been in my life, in a small hut where all the exhaust from the diesel is going into the air along with the rice husking mill. And people are working in there day in, day out. And then we went to another town where we go to an electric. It's now just powered by sustainable electricity. A guy can just turn it on and it works every time. We take that for granted here. You turn the switch on, it's going to work. He did that, and his life expectancy has gone up. His family's life expectancy has gone up. His income has gone up, and his what he can plan to do has come up. The education level, he can afford to pay for education for his children. So and then that starts to ripple out into the community. And so you see these what is essentially a small project, run by a company called Africa Green Tech, who are brilliant, and I'll give them a shout out on this because they are really, really good at what they do. They have demonstrated that if you include the community, you get buy-in from a community. All the people working on the solar grid, about 90% of the people working on the solar grid were local people. Mm. And so they were installing the solar panels. They were running the charging systems. They were running the maintenance on it. And it means that it's there and it works. Because what was really interesting, you being one of these communities, you'd see these solar panels that were obviously installed previously, years ago. They're rusted, are falling apart because nobody has the parts. Mm. Nobody can fix it. Mm. And you
mentioned about the Global Fund.
Yeah.
Obviously one of the biggest donors that supports health systems in developing countries, and they had donated, I guess, some TB
Yes, in a hospital. In a hospital,
hospital.
they paid for batteries and I think a couple of solar panels and some fridges to store vaccines. And then there was a problem with the solar panel, problem with the batteries. The system stopped working. Nobody is there to fix it. All the vaccines were ruined, and you think, well, surely the project, if you don't plan for these projects to be run and to be bought into by local communities, that is inevitable.
And to be sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. It's that
I mean,
idea.
I think it's, I mean, that's brilliant. What a fascinating case study. It just
Yeah.
it reminds me of, the importance of really focusing on a small number of levers of development that have a massive multiplier effect.
Yeah.
One of which being electricity.
Yeah.
Obviously water,
Yeah.
sanitation, health. And I think maybe that might be, and I don't want to simplify this too much, but it might be one of the problems we have with the SDGs is that there are 17 SDGs and myriad targets underneath those. And it's quite hard to get your head around what those targets are. I don't know anyone who knows every single of one of the SDGs off by heart. Yeah. Which makes it hard to be able to keep the symbol of what development is trying to achieve.
Yeah, and I guess
at the heart of any message.
And yeah, if you think about it, everyone's saying, "Oh, we're not going to reach the target. We're not going to by 2030. We're not going to reach. We're not going to achieve these SDGs." What does that do to the team of people that are trying to reach these SDGs? Oh, we failed. We've not done it. We've actually, rather than reflecting on actually everything that has been done, and reflecting on the fact that perhaps these SDGs were a bold statement of intent more than an actual target to be achieved, and then, as you say, just make everything more achievable, offer smaller, more refined targets that speak to people, local regions, because you've asked them to buy into it as well. You've not dictated these SDGs and then handed them down. I'll tell you this about what I love about doing this podcast. Right, I think the more we do it, and the more I become immersed, because my journey into sustainable development has been into this sector. It's been a really fascinating one for me, a really steep learning curve, and one I feel enriched by. But I think I love doing about these podcasts is when you're talking about stuff, I'm learning from you when I'm listening to you. But I also feel like actually the stuff that we're talking about is relevant, is important, and let's keep doing it, I'd say.
Yeah, I just love the chance to riff on this and to, you have ideas that percolate, and a chance to discuss with guests, in future episodes, really clever, bright people who are doing this day in, day out, is a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah.
So exactly. I look forward to it, and I really think that we got to, have a lot of fun.
I like not being the smartest man in the room. I mean, that's not hard. But I like that. All right, next week. So cool. Yeah, cool.
Next week. Cool. All good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Woo!
Excellent.
No one's happy.
Everyone just leave.
So midnight. Guys? Guys.